welcome everyone to Lewes FC's inaugural International Women's Day. My name is George Lee. I am your host for this evening. I am a recent became a recent owner of Lewes Football Club, and absolutely delighted to be part of this absolutely pioneering club. So just a couple of house rules: keep the sound off, if possible, and also we'd like to see people's faces. So I know sometimes it's easy to sort of like turn the video off, but if you can, be proud and sort of like share these wonderful faces to everyone, so everyone can see. You have got the most amazing the magnificent 7 women tonight who are going to be sharing some extraordinary stories about their challenges and their choice to challenge them through football. So before we do that, I just want to tell you a little bit about Lewes Football Club. Obviously, you know, as some of you are owners, some of you aren't. I think the people who aren't owners should definitely become owners. It is the most extraordinary club because every single day of the club's existence is about putting equality, choosing to challenge, pioneering. It's the only club at the first club in the world which has equality and parity between men and women. This is absolutely an extraordinary thing that the club does. And so, you know, all of us are here tonight to celebrate this club and the women who make up such a big part of the story. So without further ado, I'm going to quickly tell you what's going to happen. So the first part of the evening, we've got seven amazing women.
Loading.
Georgie, you on mute. Sorry, Georgie, you on mute.
On your iOS device or computer to this display using AirPlay. To learn more, go to apple.com/AirPlay. Step 1, Wi-Fi network. VM 147,380-5G. Step 2.
Can you hear me? That's not me.
That now.
The computer noise wasn't me. So yes, so just send your questions in the chat room, and there will be an opportunity at the end to ask all the questions that you want. But anyway, without a further ado, I am absolutely delighted to welcome our first magnificent woman tonight, who is going to share her story, and that is Innie. So Innie, can I ask you to come forward? Thank you.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us tonight. So my name's Innie, and I'm a striker for Lewes FC, and I was born in Nigeria along with all of my family, and we moved to England when I was 1 year old, and so we were first generation immigrants, and with that my parents put a lot of pressure on us to kind of succeed academically in school. So when I started playing football, my parents weren't all too keen, just because naturally they worried and they thought it would distract them from my studies. I remember, so when I was 9 years old, playing in primary school, Birmingham City Centre of Excellence, that's where I grew up in Birmingham, they said to my mum, look, we want you to come and play in our academy. And my mum's first reaction was, but girls don't play football. And so I had to kind of compromise with them and say, look, like, as long as it doesn't interfere with my studies, like, I want to play football. It was my passion. It'd be the first thing that I do when I come home from school. And surprisingly, I was the only girl to play football amongst all my friends growing up. And so I was always juggling academics with football, and that pressure my parents always put on me to, you know, not really let football kind of interfere with my studies. And my parents worked long hours, so transportation to training was always a challenge for me. I used to get lists from parents of friends and such, and that kind of continued until I hit A level, which was probably the most intense time of my life. And then I was studying biology, chemistry, maths and PE, and I was playing Aston Villa at the time, and I remember having to get the bus and then the train and then walk 20 minutes just to training. And my commute was taking me over an hour. And I always had such pressure with obviously trying to excel in school and off the field as well, you know. And at that time, you know, becoming a professional women's footballer was such a niche. It wasn't really seen as, you know, a career. And so that's why I had to work just as hard off the field as well. And also the competitive nature in me to prove to my parents that, you know, I can do both. So yeah, that was always a challenge. But in a way, one kind of helped the other. When the pressure and the stress of like studies got too intense, football was always this amazing, fantastic release whereby I could completely forget about the stresses of school and kind of just immerse myself in just having fun and just completely forgetting about all other aspects of life. And funny enough, my parents now, like they're so supportive of me, and it's I feel really proud because for them as well, I've seen them kind of overcome their own barrier, cultural barrier of women in sport. They came to Canada to watch me when I played in the Women's World Cup, and after every game, the first ones to call and say, "How was your game?" They're not sporty at all, but they always have their opinion and advice, and it's so nice to see, you know, on the family group chat, they're always trying to find the links to the games and just how far they've come with me in this journey to prove that, you know, I can do both. And even now, I'm playing football. I work for the club part-time and I'm studying MBA. And I think if I didn't have all those barriers when I was growing up, juggling school and football, there's no way I'll be able to do what I'm doing now. You know, it's made me stronger. Back then I used to think my male counterpart would never have these kind of pressures. They didn't really have the academic pressure that you put because their career was always paved for them. It was so easy in comparison. But I look back and I see all these challenges and I just think, like, if it wasn't for all those barriers, like on challenges, you know, I wouldn't be as strong as I am today. So I'm so grateful for them, and I've seen my parents grow along with me on my journey, and it's just, yeah, I'm really grateful for it.
Innie, that's so inspiring. I mean, it really is extraordinary, you know, how yes, you can have it all. And, you know, it's through those stresses, the barriers of study and football, and just being able to have that, you know, choosing to challenge yourself, you know, your journey with your parents and yourself. I mean, absolutely extraordinary. There's a question just come in for you, and it says, question for Innie. First off, you are amazing. Obviously, we know that. How did you cope with gender discrimination when you were younger? We've got time for one question before we move on. Do you want to
at the time, I guess as a child, I didn't really notice it. I didn't see a problem being the only girl to play football. I didn't see that as a problem. But even then, when sometimes get picked on because of it, I knew I had to be tougher. You know, I just showed them that no, like I'm going to be just as tough, if not tougher than you when we're playing football. You know, so I just kind of used my ability on the field to do the talking. You know, and just let them know that nothing's going to deter me. You know, if they want to call me names and whatever, then it's not going to change the fact that I'm going to be better than you on the field. And so I kind of use that to fuel me when I was growing up. I think unconsciously now, but that back then, just a super competitive nature in me is that no, like I am going to do it and I'm going to do it better than you. So that definitely fueled me.
You are an inspiration, I have to say. So thank you, really wonderful. Thank you. So I am very, very excited to sort of like move around our magnificent seven and our second story tonight, which is very different but equally inspirational, is from the wonderful Priscilla. Would you like to
Hi, I'm Priscilla. I don't know about equally inspirational. Innie, you're amazing. Juggling all of that and then scoring at the weekends. It's fantastic. But yeah, I'm Priscilla and I'm a football fan, a Lewes FC fan, and I'm in my second year of being an owner, which I care a lot about. For me, football has kind of been in my life and in my family since kind of preschool, since kind of when you start speaking, because football's always been a massive thing in our family household growing up. And I remember one of my first memories is being quite small and being told I had to pick my team. And I had my brother on one side of me saying Liverpool, and my father on the other side of me saying Arsenal. It was Liverpool, Liverpool, Arsenal, Arsenal. It's the first time I had to make a really big choice. And I told them that actually I wanted to support Aston Vanilla because I thought it sounded like an ice cream. And I thought the colours looked a bit like Raspberry Ripple. But I was told, no, it was Liverpool or it was Arsenal. So, of course, I landed with my daddy and I went with Arsenal. I've been an Arsenal fan, ever since. And at the time, I really wanted to go to a game. And I was used to kind of sitting on his lap watching the football and probably the boxing as well. But wanting to really go to a game and begging to go to games. My brother was going to games. Can I go to a game? And my dad was really clear. I couldn't go. He couldn't take me to a game. This is the 80s, growing up in the 80s. So football was a very different thing even then to what it is now. He's like, it's not safe for you to go. It's not safe to take my little girl to a football game. And he always promised me we'd go when I was old, that he'd get to take me to a game. And if things change, because he really didn't think it would be a space that I could be in and belong and not suffer either abuse as a woman, but also as a black woman, as a black kid, because of how the game was at that time. So unfortunately, my dad passed away when I was 13, so we never got to go to a game together, which has always been kind of a source of regret for me, because I'd have liked to have gone. So then I guess the thing that I choose to challenge is whether or not I belong in this game as a fan. And I stayed being a fan all the way through my teens and spent a lot of my time in my teens and my early 20s, going down the pub, watching the game with my friends. And it's been interesting as a woman fan in the game, actually the kind of conversations that would happen sort of while with my mates on the pub, that actually you're just there to accompany the boys. You're not really into the game. You don't really know anything about the game. Do you know the offside rule? Go on then, tell me. I mean, I did actually win a Cuban cigar once over being able to explain the offside rule. But there's this idea that you are being challenged as a fan, or I have been challenged as a fan, over whether or not I can watch the game, comment on the game, shout "Oi ref," because I wouldn't possibly know what I was talking about. Another memory that I have is during a World Cup, I was wearing a bandana, so a flag bandana on my head, and going to the bar, and a guy at the bar saying to me, "You shouldn't be wearing that." And I'm like, got to, bad hair day, trying to sort of pass it off as a joke. No, you shouldn't be wearing that because you're not from here. You can't support England. You're not English. So it's a double down challenge of, do I belong in the game as a woman? Do I belong in the game as somebody of Black heritage? And I think the way I chose to challenge it at the time was probably to be equally combative, if I'm honest, young and feisty, and to fight my corner about why I belonged in the game. And we had a little conversation that went beyond whether or not it was a bad hair day. And then he's like, well, can you name 5 players? Name 5 players. I can name you all the first 11 if you like, but I'm not going to. So I guess that's the thing I've been challenging through my life as a fan of the game. And I think I land in a place where I more and more want to be involved in the game. And one of the reasons I became an owner of this club was not least because of the beautiful posters that catch me every time I come out of Lewes Station. I used to live in Lewes, but because this club has the parity and the equality and the values that sit with me, so that actually as a woman, as a Black woman, as an LGBTQ plus woman, I can feel welcome in this space. Because it's a space, since I was tiny, I was told was a space for men, or a space for white people only, or a space if you're straight. And I think there are still so many people who don't necessarily feel that this is a space for them. And so for me, it's not just my fight to belong, but I believe that any of us who are present in the game are lighting the way for other people to enter and creating the space to be more inclusive for all of us. So I show up more visibly than I used to as a fan and now as an owner, because I think it's important to be seen, because there's a saying, you can't be what you can't see. So I want to be seen to be a very loud and very vocal and very happy Lewes FC supporter and owner. And that's my way of joyfully challenging people's ideas of what a football fan looks like. Thank you.
Priscilla, absolutely inspirational. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I've got a question from you from Jamie, who says, amazing story so far. Happy International Women's Day, not only to the Magnificent Seven, but to every female on the call. And I will absolutely, I will agree to that. But Jamie's asked a question of you, Priscilla, and wants to know, how did the stigma shape the way you see football?
In all honesty, I think there was a point kind of in the early 2000s, end of the 90s, where I kind of decided it wasn't my space anymore. And for a while it pushed me out, if I'm honest. You know, to not brag about being a football fan and to stop sort of going. And then I had to make the choice because it felt like a fight, you know, because you'd go to watch a game peaceably and you'd end up in some kind of conversation with somebody and it would be a fight. And I think I've had to choose to challenge in a different way and to not take on other people's stuff in a way that I might have when I was younger. And actually just to be joyfully present and own my space in it and know I don't have to justify it. And that's kind of how, but it shaped it for a while negatively, if I'm honest. I didn't see it so much growing up. And I think one of the reasons it's been great to come and be a fan of Lewes and now an owner of Lewes is I think it has brought me closer back to the game that I've loved since childhood. And that's a real game change for me. And I hope it is for other people that may not yet have discovered this club and what we're about. And also just the fantastic playing. You know, it's a fantastic game out there.
Priscilla, thank you. And you do like the way, I mean, you really are. Yeah. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So we have got plenty more just amazing, equally amazing stories to share. I mean, I think, you know, we're getting some fantastic comments on the chat. It is truly inspirational. I mean, these stories. So next, I would like to welcome Lucy. Do you want to unmute yourself and share to the world who you are and your amazing story, darling?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Lucy. I'm the assistant under-16s coach at Lewes. It's my first season with Lewes. So we started back in sort of like June, July time, I think. And yeah, it's been a bit of a crazy season so far, obviously, as everyone knows. But yeah, so it's my first year. Before that, I spent 2 years in America. I went out there to play on scholarship and study, obviously, but it didn't quite go to plan. I have some injury problems, so I sort of got cut short playing wise, didn't get to sort of fulfill that side of things, so that was always a little bit disappointing. And ultimately, like, that was my end to my playing days. And I always knew it wouldn't really go past college anyway, playing wise, but I would have hoped to have had another good like 4 years of playing, which I didn't, but that was okay. And so at that point, this was at the end of my first year out there, and I was sort of in between what I was going to do. I knew that I'd be going into coaching whenever I finished playing anyway. And at this time I got asked to stay at the college and be an assistant there and coach there, and I knew that would be difficult straight away, for obvious reasons. Coaching people who I'd actually been at the school with, on the team with, people who were my own age, some of them are even older than me. But the biggest challenge came on the inside, really. Over the course of the season, it became clear sort of where my position was within the coaching staff. There was only 3 coaches for 2 teams, a men's and a women's team, and it was full on. It always was full on. And I was a student during, and I wasn't getting paid. I was a volunteer student assistant because as a student they wasn't going to pay me, and that was fine. I was happy to do it because I love football so much. But just during the season, it really became clear how I wasn't respected or appreciated for any of the time or effort that I was putting in. And it really, really got me down. It really, really wore me down, because when you are so passionate about something, and you're just not really getting a look in, it really took it out of me. I had to deal with the fact that some of the players didn't want anything to do with me, sort of they didn't want my help. And the fact that I was an international, I'm there on my own. I sort of was kind of isolated because I was trying to make that gap of become from a player to a coach. So, you know, I didn't really have friends while I was there. I was on my own. I didn't have any sort of like freedom. I couldn't drive out there. I didn't have a car. I was just stuck there. I was there. And I became so sort of isolated. And the football was the only thing that I had. And then it became really kind of toxic. And I just, by the end, I needed a break from football, because football was the only thing I was there for, really. It was the only thing I was doing, I wanted to do. And everything to do with the football got me down, because it was a very male dominant, up the chain. All the other coaches were male, the athletic directors were male, the president of the school was male. And it was like I just had no support whatsoever. No support, and no respect at the end of the day. And it was just really hard when you are so into something and you so enjoy it. And football's the only thing I've ever applied myself in. I'm not academic. I don't really care for it. It's just not my thing. And it was always only when it was hard to stop playing anyway. I've always loved playing, and so then going to be a coach, you know, that was the first challenge of accepting, okay, I don't get to play anymore. And then it was like, okay, I can throw myself into this. I love coaching. It was good. But then to just have no acknowledgement of your efforts and to have no voice, I mean, it was painful. There were things that were going on that I didn't agree with. And it sort of morally tested me as well, because I really didn't know who to turn to, because it was like, it didn't matter where I went. It didn't matter what I had to say. They didn't want to know. And that was just because I wasn't sort of acknowledged as like a real part of the group, really. I just wasn't really sort of appreciated for any of the work I was doing. And, you know, like, it's fine. You don't need to have this big appraisal and praise for the work that you do, but it's just respect. And you just want to be respected that, you know, this is something I enjoy doing and I'm happy to do it. I didn't want to get paid. I didn't need anything like that. But I just wanted to be seen as a valued member of the team. And, you know, it was really sort of demoralizing. And COVID came and college stopped and everyone left, and I went without football for a good few months. And honestly, it was what I needed, because I hated football by the end of it, because I felt so inferior to these other people and felt like I just had no voice or stance in the team. And it was really difficult, because I just didn't want to hate football. I just didn't want to hate the only thing that I've ever loved. So it was really difficult, but taking a break from it and then sort of coming into more of a healthier environment at Lewes has been really, really good and like really refreshing. And yeah, I think, you know, it's just always really difficult when you feel like you're not valued and respected for sort of anything that you're doing. And I think that's really what a lot of people just want, just as a basic need, is just to be respected. And so, yeah, it was really challenging. And I think it's something that I really do consider now in my life, in coaching, in my work, in, you know, relationships. Everything is sort of like, do I feel like I'm getting out of this what I need? And is it on like an equal level? Because if not, it can be just really sort of frustrating to just feel sort of very lonely and isolated without, you know, having any support. So it's definitely something I take into account more now, and try and achieve. yeah, really, it was really difficult at one time, and now it's just taught me something, really. You know, every experience, even a bad one, teaches you something. And so for a little period, I hated football, and I just like I don't ever want that to happen again. So coming into a new situation was really good for me, and it's definitely something that I consider more now. Is that I shouldn't be afraid to stand up for myself and to say what I want to say, and yeah, so that's it, really.
Oh, darling, thank you. Well, I have to say, in the chat, you are getting a lot of love and a lot of respect. You really, really are. Lots of questions coming up from everyone, and we will get a chance to go through them later. But I do want to ask one question now, before we move on. So this is it says from Nat's iPhone to everyone. This is, hi Lucy, my 12-year-old daughter Ella, sitting on this call. Hi Ella, is a keen footballer and already has experienced gender discrimination. What advice would you give her future playing career?
I think it's such a talked about thing now, that I think as the years go on, it's only going to become more and more challenged, because I think there are a lot more people, a lot more women who are willing to stand up and say, wait a minute, this isn't right. And I think really that's what you have to do. You have to like respect yourself. Like you really have to respect yourself, because I think that was what became really challenging for me, was like and in the end I didn't value myself. I didn't think I was, you know, I just didn't have any respect for myself. Didn't think there was any point in me being there or doing anything, because it didn't seem that anyone really cared about it. And so it can make you feel really worthless, sort of being seen in that way. But you have to just be like, you have to have some respect for yourself and have some confidence and just think, wait a minute, this isn't right. And I need to do what's right for me. And if you feel that something is sort of in that situation where you think this is a little bit on the edge, this doesn't seem healthy, then I think you have to just have the confidence to say just to anyone. It doesn't have to be this big sort of like charade and public speaking, but to sort of say, you know, this isn't, I don't like something about this, and see sort of what, by just mentioning that this isn't okay, how that maybe affects things, because it might just take one person to speak to, that could change a situation. And so I think it really is just a lot about self-respect, and valuing yourself and having trust in your own feelings as well. If something doesn't feel right, then do something about it, because there's nothing worse than feeling like something's wrong but not being able to do something about it. So I think it's just like self-respect and having some confidence, really.
Thank you. So, Lucy, that's, I got a teaser of your story last week and I thought it was inspiring, and hearing it again, it still is, it's so inspirational to all of us, for us to cherish and treasure our own lives. It really is. So thank you. I mean, you are, lots of questions coming your way later. And as I said, a lot of applause and a lot of respect. So, okay. So see, the stories keep on growing and just, just all equally inspiring. So next on from our magnificent 7, we have Karen. And I have to say a massive big thanks to Karen, because it was through Karen that I found out about the club and became an owner, and a very, very proud owner. I mean, absolutely extraordinary. So Karen, over to you, darling.
Thank you very much. Wow, it's such a privilege to be with everyone tonight. These stories are amazing. And my name's Karen Dobre. I'm a director, one of the elected directors on the board at Lewes Football Club. And to be honest, every day that I work for this club feels a bit like a privilege, because like, when do you actually get to work for something that's genuinely pioneering like this club? It really feels like an honor to do what I do for the club. So anyway, in terms of choosing to challenge on Happy International Women's Day, so my story really is about confidence, about gaining confidence, and what I call the power of the imposter. That's me, right? So I'm going to start by reading out the FA's declaration in 1921, when, as many of you will know, they banned women from playing football. And what they said was that this council feels impelled to express their strong opinion that the game of football is quite unsuitable for females and ought not to be encouraged. So with that ban, they banned women from playing football on FA pitches or with FA affiliated coaches for 50 years. And one of the effects of that ban meant that when I was at school growing up, I wasn't allowed to play football. It was the boys that played football. I was growing up in the 70s, and the ban wasn't lifted till 71, you know. So it wasn't that I didn't like football. It was literally that I didn't even think about football. It was not on the table for me as an option, right? That's growing up. And then what I saw of football was on the TV, and that was men playing football. I never saw women play football on the telly. And then in the newspapers, I ignored the back pages anyway, because there was nothing there for me. It was men playing football, and I thought that was nothing to do with me. And I sometimes saw on the front pages of papers hooligans, or football hooligans, or like football stars behaving badly in jacuzzis with glamorous women, you know, that kind of story. Again, nothing there that interested me. And in fact, the only place that I saw for women growing up in football was as a wag, you know, decorating the arm of a male footballer. And that's what I thought of football. So I didn't have any brothers, and my dad wasn't into football. And when you talk to our players now, a lot of them do have brothers, and they do have fathers that encourage them. I didn't have that, just a sister. So it wasn't until Lewes FC's equality campaign, equality initiative in July 2017, that I became interested in football. And it wasn't until then that I went to watch a women's match, and I was very inspired by these women playing football. I've always been a feminist, and these were women in a public place, being strong, with that team spirit, being resilient, failing, getting up again, and just being so remarkable. In myself, I felt really refreshed, and I just felt like I was strong. It kind of, just by watching them, there was this kind of transference of power, which was amazing. And I just knew I wanted to get back to the dripping pan and watch more women's football. So, and I wanted my daughter to watch it, and I wanted all of her friends to watch it, and I wanted to tell other women to come and watch this sport. Anyway, so since that time, July 2017, I volunteered to go and tell women that they should come and watch Lewes FC women play, because this was the first club in the world to pay women the same as men and value them the same as men. And the criticism of the equality campaign was always, well, they don't get the same crowds as the men, so they don't deserve the same money. And that was just so unfair, given that how much women's football had been held back. And I wanted to make that right. I thought this was such a win-win for everybody. You know, these women would come and they'd feel great about it, and they'd like football, and the crowds would swell, and then sponsors would take notice, and the game quality would go up because we'd have the money to put into the game. And so I just thought, this is just brilliant, and this is what I want to do. So I went and told lots of people about it, and to draw attention to the clear link between equality on the pitch and gender equality in the wider world, you know, in society, because sport is a massive influencer of the way that we see people. So then I started to give public talks on Equality FC, but I still felt uncomfortable, if I'm honest with you, at a football match, at a men's football match in particular, but even at a women's football match, I felt like I wasn't sure that I belonged. I felt, because I didn't know anything about football, I didn't have that shared history. If someone said to me, oh, remember that time when Lineker scored for whoever and we all did this, and I couldn't share that. I didn't know what they were talking about because I deliberately kind of ignored it. So I still felt a bit awkward and uncomfortable around football. But anyway, that's because, you know, I am a double imposter. I'm a woman in a male bastion, and I'm a woman who's never played or liked football until recently. So I've got I've got a lot to get over. So and that impacts on my confidence, I'll be honest with you. And I'm going to tell you a very short story about oh, I'm going to just admit someone else, Katie Rood's coming to join us. Just tell you a short story about how that manifests with me. So back in 2019, the club was nominated for a UN Women Award, UN Women UK. And I went along to the interview where we were to be interviewed to see if we would win this award. We were up against all sorts of wonderful women empowering organizations. And I went with two of our male directors, and I won't name them, but they're both great guys. In fact, that, you know, the board is full of male allies, and it's brilliant. We get a lot of support. Anyway, I went with them, and they were kind of, you know, saying that they were going to say this, they were going to say that. We were having a coffee in Costa beforehand. Then we went into this amazing building that UN Women had been given to do this these interviews, with these beautiful sort of oak panels everywhere and wonderful biscuits and coffee and all the rest of it. And we can't, you know, I just decided I'm just going to be really friendly. I'm just going to be the one that's the kind of social glue here, because I'm not quite sure what to say. So I was really, really friendly. And the three of us went into this room, and there were 6 or 7 people behind a desk, and they were all women bar one man. And so the 2 wonderful directors were kind of sort of going on, but it started to stall. The interview started to stall, and it was like clear that they weren't answering the questions that the women wanted to hear. And I thought, I've got to say something. And the question really was, how do you think the men at the club, the men, feel about the equality initiative? Are some of them a bit resentful, you know? And the answer really was, this is an issue. Most of them are incredibly supportive, but some of them do feel a bit like we're sort of elbowing in on their act, and that they might lose out, you know, somehow if we're concentrating more on the women. And so I answered that question, and I talked to them, and I said, you know, but isn't it wonderful that we're able to have these questions about gender equality with all these men, because we're a football club? These men wouldn't normally be talking about gender equality, you know. And we had a great sort of dialogue about that. And then out of the room we go, and the 2 other directors were saying, don't think we've won that. Don't think we've got that. You know, great that we were nominated, but don't think we've won it. And I thought, I sort of bowed to their superior knowledge about kind of, I don't know, directors and football and things like that. And I thought they're probably right. And then I got an email inviting me to the award ceremony, and it said, you know, prepare a speech just in case you've won. And I said, well, can other people come? And they said, no, just you. And I thought, well, that means we haven't won, because otherwise they'd say we could bring more people. And the other director said, yeah, we won't have won, but it was great that we were nominated. Along I go. And my goodness, if we didn't get announced and win this award. And so up I went, got the mic, didn't have, you know, just bumbled my way through and said, thank you very much, this is amazing. And all the directors were amazed when I messaged them. And it just really taught me a lesson that, you know, when I was in that room having that interview, I had decades of experience as a woman to draw on that the men didn't have. And my experience and my values are actually really, really useful around this table at Lewes FC, while we're looking for a new market, or expanding our market, while we're appealing to more people and including more people in football, and thinking of ways that we can have angles to, you know, to make it a place where more and more people belong, especially women, because women have been excluded.
Sorry.
Oh, am I going on too long?
Well,
Sorry,
no, it's
Georgie.
wonderful. It just, no, and I could listen to you forever. It's just, I just need to, in a nice
Absolutely.
possible way.
Yes, thank you, Georgie. No, that's fine. So I think that being an imposter is actually a superpower and really adds to the diversity and inclusion of an organisation. Thank you.
Oh, well, I have to say, yeah, I mean, I'm determined to be an imposter, a double imposter. Then we'll have double superpowers. Honestly, Karen, it's extraordinary. And I think it's all about trusting our bigger self, isn't it? And sort of, yes, and you know, the being able to challenge. So, you know, so thank you. Another truly inspirational story. So we're gonna swerve slightly different tact. I have, you know, I love Tasha's story. So Tash, can I invite you to unmute yourself and share your really inspirational story to everyone?
Thank you. I was a child in the 1950s, and that's at a time when girls were definitely not allowed to play football. And we were offered hockey. We could smash each other around with huge sticks and get knocked in the face by rock hard balls, but we were far too delicate to play football. And I always thought that I was born either 60 years too early or 60 years too late, because in the 1890s, there were women's teams, football teams. And in 1920, just before it got banned, there was a match and there were 53,000 spectators, plus thousands outside, locked out because there wasn't enough space. So that's how popular women's football was. But in the 1950s, there was no way, and I was so desperate. And I used to watch the boys play football. And I eventually persuaded my mum to get me a ball. And I kicked it against the walls of the flats after school every day. I had no really idea how to kick a ball at all, but then the neighbours passing by would make a lot of comments like, she's a girl, she's a weirdo playing football, she's a freak. And that kind of really hit home. It really undermined my confidence a lot, the word freak especially, because also I was beginning to realise that I was attracted to girls and not boys, so I was a double freak. So that hit me very hard. But also it made me very angry. It made me angry at the injustice. And I carried that right through and became a feminist. And all my life I fought against the gender injustice, sexuality injustice, social injustice, racial injustice. And I was in a theatre company and a band that, and we made that our mission to fight against that siren all through the 80s. And in fact, we're still a band now, and we're still rocking at 60s and 70s, in our 60s and 70s. And we're still, you know, being very angry. And I thought, I think like Karen, I'd kind of put like football, okay, it wasn't for me. And so it was a pain that I carried. But I tried to put it to the back of my mind, because it wasn't something that was, and it was too late then. And it wasn't until just before my 70s that I discovered, but before I became 70, I discovered walking football. And so I joined the Brighton and Hove Walking Football Club. And my first game, it became very obvious that I didn't know how to kick a ball. And so I was bunged in goal. And the first one I saved, but my hand went like that. And so I broke a wrist. And I think my mate said, well, you know, there you go. It's that you can't do that sort of thing, not at that age anyway. So 5 weeks later, I went back and I thought, I'm going to learn how to play this game. And there was a couple of other women in the club. It was almost all men, and we demanded that we got some coaching. And so I learned how to kick a ball. I learned how to collect a ball, how to pass, and became a defender. And I started getting called the terrier because the way I always closed opponents down. And broke another wrist. And then International Women's Day a couple of years ago, I was lucky enough to catch Karen talking about Lewes Football Club. And I was very, I joined immediately. I became an owner because of the equalities issue. And it seemed to reflect everything I felt, you know, the club's philosophy. And talked to Karen and Charlie about having a women's walking football club. And they very kindly allowed us a place to practice, and we got a strip. I was so proud to get a strip. So, you know, it kind of fulfilled a dream for me after all this time, because, and I'm so proud of all the women here who are fighting for, you know, girls and women to play football. And it's just been brilliant seeing it happen and evolve in the last, you know, 20, 30 years. It's such a long way to go. And I you know, still hearing that women are struggling, that girls are struggling is very painful, but it's a hell of a lot better. And so, yeah. That's my story, really.
Oh, Tash, honestly, just, oh, look, lots and lots and lots and lots of claps for you. I mean, absolutely inspirational. It really, really is. And it just shows that, you know, that a passion, you know, our age does not define us. A passion is a passion. And actually we can, no matter at what stage in our life, we just got to believe ourselves and we got to find a way, and we can achieve it. So wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So Tash, thank you. I think there's a few more questions for you later, but we'll come back. So, okay, so just shows that the power of this game to unite all generations. We're going to go to Amy. Amy, would you like to unmute yourself and share your story? Thank you.
Hiya, I'm Amy, and I'm currently captain of the Lewes under-18s team. And I'd just like to start off by saying, you know, it's such a pleasure to talk alongside such inspirational women this evening. And I think what's quite different about my story is there's a bit of a more positive light to it, of the fact that you can see perhaps how the women's game has improved and has progressed for my generation. And obviously that gives us hope for the future, that it can be better for generations to come. So I'm going to start off by talking about my story and how I got into football. So as most girls did, I started out at a boys' team at the age of 7. My dad used to play football, and so he was my inspiration for getting involved. And I also have a twin sister who decided to start playing with me. So we joined this team at Pevensey in West Ham. And for us, joining a boys' team, it didn't seem unnatural. It didn't seem weird, because it was just the thing to do. Like, there wasn't any girls' teams, not for that young of an age anyway. And so joining a boys' team, it didn't seem different. It didn't seem weird, because it was all I knew. And so my first season with the boys, it wasn't quite everything I'd hoped it to be, because obviously being a girl, while I was happy to have the pleasure to play, which some of you guys, you know, you've said you didn't get that opportunity, but, you know, they didn't pass to you because you're a girl. Some of the parents weren't too keen if, you know, you got played over their son. And you just didn't get that inclusive feeling from the team that you would have hoped for. And so after a season, I decided that, you know, football wasn't for me, and I stopped playing. And it wasn't until I was watching my dad play that I met another girl, Minnie, who I still play football with today. And she was the first other girl, other than my sister, that I'd met that played football. And I think for me, that was the first opportunity for me to realise that other girls did play football. Like, it wasn't weird that me and my sister played football. There was other girls out there. And that inspired me, you know, to get back involved in the game. And I found I was very lucky to find a local girls team called Eastbourne Girls that I joined from the age of under 10s. And I think for me, this is where my story is a lot more positive, because from joining that team, you know, it was so different. Training with girls, you felt like you belonged, you know, it was such an inclusive feeling that is what I think is positive, because girls can experience that more nowadays than they could ever before. Not saying, you know, it was all plain sailing, because, you know, we played on a pitch that often had chickens that would escape from the local pen and they'd be running across the pitch. There was one time that we did have to go to the pitch and pick up goose poo before we played to make sure that, you know, we could go ahead with the game. But so we did have our challenges as well, but we had it a lot easier than, like some of you guys have said. What was nice about our team was, because the girls were so appreciative to be in this girls team, everyone got along. All everyone wanted to do was play. We had such a supportive group of parents behind us, which I feel made a difference, because I think for young girls, it's so easy for them to come across challenges like this and think, that's it, I've had enough. And for us to all have that support system behind us to encourage us, and just with your teammates around you, you see them every day going out and playing. And so to you, you think, well, I'm going to follow their lead. And that, I think that's what us all being a close group kept us all going. Throughout football, there's been significant moments for me that have shown to me, you know, the power of girls, the power of women, especially in football. And I think one moment that stood out to me was in a county cup final against Crawley Wasps. And we were playing a year up, we were clearly the underdogs. And so we went out, and this still, to me, stands to be the best game that I've ever played. And we actually won the game 4-3. And to me, this showed that with the grit and determination of a team, of these girls, that we were actually capable of doing anything. And I felt proud to be part of the club. And that determination is still within me now to keep going on and achieving things like I felt in that moment. Football has impacted all areas of my life. At secondary school, there was never a girls' team. Obviously, you'd always have the boys' team. You'd have boys sitting on the bench because there was too many of them. And when I joined secondary school, me and a few of my mates, we decided that, you know, it wasn't okay. We were going to start a girls' football team. So with the boys' hand-me-down kit that was like 3 sizes too big for all of us, we decided to make our own team. And that did mean, you know, forcing a few of our friends to get involved in the hopes that we could get a full 11. Usually we only got 10 if we were lucky, but to see other girls getting involved in football and loving it like I loved it, to me, that was a great sight. And it really inspired me that I could get other people involved and they could get the enjoyment out of it that I've had for so many years. And with that school team, we won the Sussex FA Cup for the schools. And that showed, you know, when we came back to school, showing all these girls in the younger years, in the years above, that not only were we a girls' football team for the school, but, you know, it was possible for us to go out and be successful in doing so. You know, you could still win things as a girl. It wasn't just a boys' thing. And so after playing for Eastbourne Girls, this is when our whole team made the move to come and play for Lewes. Thankfully, we got to keep our management, which was my dad and Shep. But the whole team came across and we joined Lewes. And for us, this was a lot different from playing at Eastbourne Girls. You know, it obviously wasn't as well known. We had one women's team above us and that was it. To then come across to this whole setup where, you know, we played on the Astro, you got teams before and after you of all these women of different ages. It then opened our eyes even more to how much the women's game was growing. And, you know, you have those role models coming on after training and you could look up to them and think, oh, that's the first team, wow, that's incredible. And I think for that was quite inspiring, because that was the sort of time that you'd get a lot of girls that would drop out of sport. So you'd have your teammates that you've played with for years, and for girls around like the teenage age, they suddenly think, actually, you know, either this isn't not cool, but this isn't for me anymore. Like I don't want to play anymore. And that's quite upsetting with people that you've played with for years. But coming over to Lewes put that positive spin on it, really, that, you know, there was still women out there playing and people to aspire to. In our first season at Lewes, we actually went on to win the League Cup, the County Cup and the League. And that was for the 3rd year in a row. So we completed the treble, continuing our legacy from Eastbourne girls. And again, that showed to me that we were a group of girls, and if we wanted to achieve something, we wouldn't let anything stand in our way. You know, no one could stop us. If we wanted to go out and win, if we all wanted to put the effort in, then anything was possible. And then joining the under-18s for Lewes, you know, that's a big step up to the women's game. You know, it's more physical. It's everything that people think girls football isn't, really. You know, it's more physical, it's quicker. There's tougher competition because there's more teams, which is what I was really excited about. And for someone who loves a challenge with that winning mentality, it was nice to step up to that and see that, you know, just because I was getting older, football wasn't stopping. And being a captain in particular has always been a great privilege to me. And I've always tried to prove myself worthy, do the best that I can. And for me, the most important thing is making sure that everyone feels welcome. Because
30 seconds, Amy.
Because I benefited so much from having that great support system around me, that I want to make sure that anyone in the team, irrespective if they've come from a team and they felt left out, everyone feels welcome within that team. Because although obviously it's International Women's Day, I think we still need to remember that it's important to know that you're not alone in anything that you do. And I wouldn't be here without the support from the people around me, my coaches, you know, inspiring female players above me. And I think it's important to know that, yeah, definitely that you aren't alone. So thank you.
Amy, you are a force. Oh my God. So honestly, yeah, we need to clone you, and every team should have an Amy. You've given me goose pimples stuff. Thank you. And also just how inspirational after hearing Tasha's story. The same passion, but just different opportunities. And honestly, I feel a little bit tearful. What you were saying is that, you know, how hopeful this is, how things have changed. And when we work together and we have the courage to challenge and choose to challenge, it's amazing what we can do. Woohoo! I say Lewes FC. Oh my goodness me. I am so proud to be an owner. Oh, right. Sorry, I just need to calm myself down a little bit. Anyway, Maggie. So last but definitely not least, I have to say, I've only met you a few times, maybe, but you are a force, and I am so looking forward to you sharing your story. So over to you.
Thanks, Georgie. I actually feel a bit like Amy should have ended this. I'm feeling like we should have reversed the order here. She was so good. Yeah, good. Thanks it's been really inspirational to listen to everyone, and also it's so interesting that everyone's stories resonate in some particular way. It doesn't matter how old or what the background is or what role the woman has. So my story starts a long time before I joined Lewes. I'm the general manager here now, but in what I call my previous life, I had a job that sent me around the world. So I worked in anti-corruption and good governance and human rights. And my job was basically to go to the UN or go to G20. So I'd be in New York one week, and then I'd be in Geneva. And then I'd be out in Sri Lanka working with partners out there, always looking to push for better legislation and law for businesses and governments around those particular issues. So completely different from football, but football was something I always did on the side. It was a game for me. It was the thing that I loved doing, just as a pastime. And because I traveled around the world and lived in a number of countries around the world, it meant that I always played football. I always found a team. I think there's a stereotype that suggests that women's football doesn't exist, but it didn't matter where I was, there was always a team to play for. And that was the case when I was living in Tanzania, when I was living in Rwanda, Germany, the Netherlands. It didn't matter where I was. And I managed to, when I was playing in Berlin, there was a woman that I met and her name was Nadia. She happened to be passing through Berlin. She wasn't living there. She was actually living in Lebanon. And we got chatting about football. Turns out she was playing in Lebanon. And her team was pretty good. She was pretty good. And in fact, that last season, she'd won the National Cup, so the equivalent of the FA Cup here. And as she was telling me this, her face just fell. And I was like, whoa, like you won the National Cup. Why? And she was like, yeah, and we won. And I was like, what's going on here? And she said, well, yeah, it was great. I mean, we worked really hard. We didn't have many resources, but we managed to keep on beating these teams and get through to the final. And then we won, and it was like this incredible game. And we were singing and dancing in the changing room afterwards. And they'd been given this prize. It was in an envelope and it was cash. And they were chatting in the changing room about what they were going to spend this money on. They needed new balls, new kit, you name it, they didn't have it. And they were so excited that finally they'd won off their own backs the resources to actually put back into the team. And as they were celebrating, a man walked into the changing room, went over, took the envelope and said to them, I'll take care of this, and walked out. And that man worked for the Lebanese Football Association. So the very body that was meant to support and promote football in Lebanon, the very body that had even allotted this money to this team for this competition, it was the same, a person from the same body that walked in and thought that he had the right to take this money. And of course, the women never saw that prize again. They never saw the cash again. The money was just stolen. And for me, it makes me so, I'm still angry like 6 or 7 years after hearing this story from Nadia. And for me, it was yet another piece of data, another bit of evidence, another story that I felt like I was collecting in my internal bank about how the people who run the game and who govern the game just did not care about women and just did not care about me. And I could remember a million instances from my own growing up as a child playing football, about my own, the Isle of Wight Football Association not allowing us women to play and compete in the tournament, but the men were allowed to go, but the women, we weren't allowed to, not yet, maybe next year. And again, a few years about the same time, the FIFA corruption scandal hit, or the latest FIFA corruption scandal, let's say. And it was one of the scandals where, there was vote buying and people were buying the votes by stealing the budget lines from various national level budgets for football. And they would often be the development budget, which for anyone is code for women's football or youth football. And again, it was like FIFA, it goes right up to the top, from FIFA down to national football associations, down to local football associations. It didn't matter. The people in charge just did not care. And this was, I guess, a bit of a turning point for me, because I'd had this background in anti-corruption and good governance and human rights. And suddenly I felt like I was able to read between the lines when I was looking at press releases or reports. I was able to read that the Lebanese Football Association just did not publish any information at all about their budgets, their annual activities. There was no data out there. So there was no way for Nadia to go back and challenge and go back and say, hey, we won this money, where did the money go? There was no budget line, there was nothing public. And I started to use those skills and try to kind of put a bit of an activist twist on some of the things that I was doing. So in my spare time at weekends and evenings, I helped set up Equal Playing Field. So an organisation that pushes opportunity, equality and respect for women and girls around the world in football. Big collaboration of women that now span more than 100 countries, really. And it was at that time, working with Equal Playing Field, that my paths crossed with Lewes. And I think I really think a lot about Nadia and how much her one tiny little story impacted me. Even at the time, it was just a conversation and it was just a data point and it was just another additional thing that added to my own personal frustration. But it's something that I remember each day. And I wanted to drop her a line. I had her email address and I dropped her a line quite recently just to let her know what kind of an influence she had had on me. So I quite excitedly told her that as part of this process, I was now the general manager of a football club, and not just any football club, but the best football club in the world. If anyone's on this call and doesn't know this yet, then they should. And so I was proudly told her that. And then I kind of said, oh, by the way, what are you doing these days? Are you all right? How's it going? And I was so delighted to get an email back saying that this same woman who was treated so badly at that time is now working for the Lebanese Football Association. And in fact, I think she might be the head coach or one of the coaches for the main women's team. And I just thought, wow, I mean, it takes a lot, I think, to want to go into the machine and try to fix it. And I felt that when I took the job at Lewes, one of the things I wanted to do was put my own money where my mouth was and see what role I can play on the inside rather than being on the outside criticizing it. And so, yeah, I think of Nadia today, and I think of all the people that have chosen to challenge. It feels like a cliche now, but really to try to work on the inside and say, hey, I know that you don't want me here, but I'm going to be here. So that's my story. Thank you, Georgie.
Woohoo! Oh, wow. You are a force, my darling. I have to say, all of you, just, it is, you know, one of the things we talked about when we started talking about what we could do for International Women's Day was how can we talk about not the challenges in the negative, but the challenges in terms of hope and positivity. I have to say, yeah, I mean, just from where I am is absolutely extraordinary. Well,